we have Isaiah Andrew, who he's a cool guy, totally amazing. Um, Director of UX with VSA, also one of our sponsors, but not right. He's here today. Why he's here today is he works all over the world, working through design research and putting together really amazing stuff. He's traveled all over the world, London, Tokyo. Well, here he is. I'll let him talk more about it.
Hello. Thank you for the very warm introduction. Um, so my name is Isaiah Andrew, and I'm with VSA Partners here out of New York. We actually have offices in Chicago, New York, and Detroit as well. But today I'm here to talk to you about um, a happy seller. Um, in the larger context, I want to talk about how we use information architecture and user experience design to get to the point where we have a happy user audience. Um, just to give you a little bit of context, the full story is it didn't start off that easy. We don't end up with happy users. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of iterations, it takes a lot of testing, a lot of failing, a lot of redesigning to get to the point where our user is happy. And the question that I think user experience designers, information architects, visual designers, us as a collective, we struggle with trying to understand how do we really get to that point of having a happy audience. Um, so overall, it's kind of telling you the background of the story. And last year, IBM worked with VSA to send a team of designers, content strategists, and uh, uh, and developers to Tokyo, Japan, to work with the IBM office in Tokyo. And they want us to figure out how can we create a world-class product that doesn't look anything like IBM, doesn't feel anything like IBM, and really captures the need of the IBM sales audience and launch it within 2 months. So pretty big challenge, pretty frightening. And we really wanted to figure out how do we really get to that point? How do we design something that doesn't look and feel like the norm when we don't even know where we are? Being in Tokyo really made us feel like we were exploring a new space. And we really wanted to figure out how do we become one with our community? How do we build trust with our audience? How do we gain an understanding of the true problem and our clients? And how do we actually design it? How do we even get there? So let's start with exploring the environment. The current state was chaotic. We had a lot of inputs. We had a lot of sites that we were looking at. We had a lot of apps that we were looking at. We had a large audience of people, IBM sellers, of all different sizes and shapes and levels of experience that we really had to figure out how to understand. There's a lot of input to really try to contextualize and architect in a way that made sense. We did a pretty rigorous examination. We found over 50 APIs and content sources that had to be integrated into one solution. And we also had to make sure that it fit together in a logical way that people would actually want to use and would support their daily needs and really make them feel successful. All right. So we did an extensive evaluation of not only in-house stuff, but we looked at things outside of IBM. We really wanted to, as we said, become one with our environment. So we studied local design influences. We looked at print and digital inputs as a way to really understand what are people currently working with? What things impact the way they see the world? What things really resonate with them in terms of beautiful design? It's not one-to-one with our understanding. We had to become one with the user and see things from their perspective. In the middle is a menu. Every day at restaurants, they handwrite the menu from what they got from the local market. So this is just an example of some of the design influences in the way content is organized and read and interpreted by audiences. We also wanted to become one with the physical space too. It wasn't just about design. It was about what happens when you walk through a mall. What do you see? What types of input are you seeing? And how do you make decisions from all this noise and chaos? What about areas of calm and tranquility? How do you become comfortable? How do you take a step back from all the noise and find something that really makes you feel happy and comfortable? What about fun? How do you find something that you want to use every day? How do you create something that makes people become stuck to it? And all of these external and internal factors really led to our decision making, not only around the product that we were designing, but the environment that we were trying to create to successfully launch a product. One of the biggest challenges that we faced was really embracing those differences. So, for instance, design in Japan doesn't really align to some of the design that we see here. There's a lot more stuff going on. There's a lot more noise. There are a lot of links and options, and things are really compacted into space. And from my perspective, I was wondering, like, how do you even see through the noise? Like, how do you figure out where to go? Where do you start? But as we talked to users, as we did real research, we found that they actually liked designs such as these because it gave them a lot of options. It made it feel like they had a lot in their hands. So even things that didn't really make sense to us, we had to figure out how to really leverage to make sense for our users. We really just had to throw away all assumptions and embrace those differences. And as UX designers and information architects, it's not about designing for what you think makes sense. It's really about throwing away your initial understandings and seeing things through the eyes and the lens of your users. So, an important thing when designing from scratch and kind of embracing new audiences, building trust. If I'm going to have you tell me kind of your personal information, tell me your insights, tell me your experiences and your challenges and pain points, you have to trust me. You have to trust that we're taking that information and using it in an effective manner. You have to trust that we are, experts in our fields to make sure that we're designing something that really makes sense. We're not just wasting your time. We're working with busy audiences, people who have a lot on their plates and schedules, and we really want to make sure they trust us before we really got too far into the design process. And beyond just gaining trust with our users, we have to gain trust within our team. And in order to do so, we kind of started by learning how to fit out to fit in. So when we got to IBM Japan, there's no Apple, Mac products, anything like that, right? So first thing we do, go buy a bunch of Apple products, walk through the hallways, everyone sees it, gets a lot of attention, it's pretty funny. And even though it's kind of blurry, you can see our lab team member putting the Apple sticker on his ThinkPad as a way to kind of help us culturally assimilate. We also participate in a lot of Japanese traditions and cultural explorations as well. And of course, we had some really amazing food and drinks with our team, really as a way to form cultural assimilation and one with our team members so we can have an effective agile team, which would allow us to build an agile product. But when it came to gaining trust with our users, we still struggled. In the new environment that we were in, we really didn't know how to talk to our users. One, because we're foreigners, but two, we didn't speak Japanese. We didn't know how to really talk to them in ways that were effective. So we set up breakfast sessions. So every morning, 9 a.m., we had coffee, donuts, and snacks available for the users or for the IBM employees when they came into the office. It allowed them to see our faces and become comfortable with them. And it allowed them to kind of talk to us in a more friendly manner outside the normal confines of an office where we're trying to test products. We also recruited a group of younger, less experienced designers or IBMers to become part of our global product innovation team, something that we made up on the fly. But the purpose of the global product innovation team was for us to have a trusted set of users. We had 50 sellers that we could bounce ideas off of, show sketches in real time, do some quick product testing, and allow them to really become one with us And then we also encourage them to kind of share their findings and share the new products that we were designing with their friends. So kind of like giving someone a short list of invitations to, try a new product. And that was really effective for us. So gaining understanding. One thing that I think we've all faced is how do you deal with stakeholder requirements? When you're told that you have to design something that fits this list of criteria, how do you balance that with what the audience really wants? I'm sure everyone's kind of been through that situation. So how do you find that middle ground? How do you prioritize what you're really designing for to make sure that you're designing something that works, not just for your stakeholders that are paying you, but for the people that you need to make happy? So we started with some very lightweight persona definition. We didn't know our audience yet, but we had some high-level understanding. We talked to our stakeholders. They told us who we were designing for. So we took a guess. How do we start? Who are we designing for? Let's just make up somebody and then bring in the actual sellers to say, is this right? Does this feel like it's for you? Are these implications something that actually impact your day-to-day routines? If not, let's fix it. Let's get it right together. By doing so, we were able to create a really comprehensive user journey map. We looked at some of the highs and lows of their experiences and pain points and challenges as they go through a typical sales process. So when you look at stage one, what tools are you using? Who are you talking to? What creates a roadblock from you getting from stage one to stage two? And what doesn't exist today that would help you? And conversely, what does exist that helps you? So we make sure that we take that into consideration and make sure it's part of the design. All right. So as far as defining the audience, we really want to know who we were building this for. Who were they? We found that they were digitally enabled. They were early adopters to technology. They loved seeing and trying new products. They weren't afraid to get their hands on the latest app release. They were always mobile. They were traveling back and forth between the office, between their client site, between meetings on different floors of the office. So they needed something that fit to that lifestyle. They were younger and newer to IBM, which means that they didn't have 20 or 30 years of experience kind of burdening their decisions. They're willing to try new things and explore, which is great. And they were confident and self-aware. When designing for users, you really have to take into consideration that trust and respect factor. You have to respect the fact that they know what they're doing, they're good at what they do, and you don't want to minimize that. You really need to elevate it. As we said, they were on the road, they were in trains, they were driving. So how do you design something that kind of fits those mobile needs? How do you design something that allows people to still connect and engage and collaborate even when they're not co-located at all times? And what about decision making? When designing, how do we prioritize content and features that really align to the way they make decisions? So we ask them, what do you really care about? Their money, obviously, right? How close am I to meeting my sales quota? How close am I to making sure I get my bonus this year? What do I need to do to make sure that happens? So we wanted to make sure that we included designs that clearly articulated that to the user. What about my client? What about, was there a data breach issue? Was there an oil spill? Was there a food contamination that happened? What relevant client news was happening that would impact me as a seller? So we made sure that we integrated their client news, their industry news, so they can make better decisions, they can react faster, and be more prepared when they entered client situations. And alerts and deadlines. So if I have a meeting coming up, if I have a presentation due, if I have a client walkthrough to do, I need to be able to do that and know that it's coming up so that I can prepare to have that client interaction in a more effective manner. So taking all those inputs really led us to getting to a place where we kind of understood what we needed to prioritize. And as far as news and preparing for client engagement, we had a lot of different things that they were looking at. They're using Google News and Google Alerts. They're using LinkedIn as a way to connect with clients. And in Tokyo, they actually use Facebook as a primary means for client communication and connectedness, which is a little different for us because we'll use something like LinkedIn, right? So really understanding that difference in understanding was really important for us when we figured out how to integrate some of those features into our app. What about impediments? So as we said, they're on the road, so connectivity is a huge problem. What about um, making sure that they could get past the firewall? So a lot of their important client information was behind a firewall. How do you extract some of that and make sure that it's mobile enabled so that you can find that information on the go in real time? And really, the biggest thing is focusing efforts. Our audience was, a group of busy sellers, right? So they don't have time to kind of guess and waste time. So we had to make sure that we designed something that really allowed them to focus their efforts and energy into opportunities and sales that would really materialize. How do you elevate that? Where do you start? So those are some of the questions that we asked when trying to really define our users and the problem. All right. One other thing that we encountered was our understanding of how someone would actually go through a sales journey. So when you think about, a typical path, it's linear. So a lot of the sales collateral and material was designed in a very linear manner. But as we talked to users, we found out that it's never really linear. You go to stage 2 to stage 4, then back to stage 3 when something breaks. You spend a week at stage 2, but maybe 4 months at stage 3. How do you stay engaged? How do you stay informed? So designing for that was a huge challenge that we had to really overcome and make sure that we weren't designing for something that was linear, but indeed cyclical in nature. So at the end of the day, we realized that we need to build something that was lightweight, something that was mobile, responsive, always available, on demand. We need something that really allowed them to quickly interact and take a step back. So we didn't want them to spend 20 minutes on the app. We want them to spend 30 seconds, 5 seconds digesting important content and being able to make a decision and keep it moving. So about the designs. We really wanted to make sure that all the input that we got from our users and from our environment was the main focus of our early stage designs. So as we said, it had to be responsive. It had to enable prioritization. It needed to provide status and goal setting. And it really needed to connect sellers to their clients and to their teams so they could have effective and meaningful collaboration. We also wanted to provide some social aspects to it to make sure it felt relevant and always updated. We wanted to create that sticky factor that people could easily and really want to come back to even throughout their busy day. So we thought, why don't we put forth information architecture that would really elevate some of those key needs and challenges? And we also want to make sure that it was something that provided education. So we broke it down between progressing opportunities, connecting with, experts and learning material, but also being able to find support and collateral to make sure that they had stuff offline and online that they could always use. I'm just going to run through a few different wireframes to show some of the early stage progression. And as we brought this to users, we were able to respond quickly with our agile team. So all of our breakfast sessions, all of our user testing teams and our product innovation teams really served as input to allow us to quickly maneuver some of our design thinking and provide them with stuff that responded to their actual needs. And during our testing, we learned that some of the visualizations actually weren't helpful. Even though we had a lot of great data, the real problem was that they didn't trust the data. They weren't able to control and manipulate it. And sometimes if it wasn't updated, it wasn't useful. So all of our visualizations meant nothing if it wasn't accurate. Some of our design thinking made it feel like it was a management tool. We gave them kind of workbooks to progress opportunities, but at the end of the day, it felt like homework. And if I'm busy, if I'm on the go and have a lot on my plate, I don't have time for more homework. I want something that makes me just find what I need and get out. I don't need to be monitored. So as far as some of our initial goals, we realized that we captured a few, but not all. So then we had our second release. As far as trying to play a video, it's fine. As far as our second release, we really tried to minimize some of the information architecture. We tried to contextualize information they were seeing. So if I needed to find an expert, if I needed to find a report, if I needed to find news, there wasn't navigation to those specific areas. I would go to the opportunity that I was working on or the client that I'm engaged with and find that information there. So it becomes a lot more intuitive to find the information you need instead of just a large library of stuff. We also moved to increase the customization of the content. So if I needed to update my sales goals numbers for a certain quarter, I could do so within the app. It felt a lot more personal now, right? Um, as far as seeing the news and media, I could find the stuff that I want. I could turn off certain channels. I can favorite certain inputs. It became a lot more contextual for their actual needs. And it also allowed me to create my own task. It wasn't just tasks that were assigned to me, I could create my own and allow that to kind of dictate and prioritize my interactions for the day. And as far as some of the feedback, it's pretty good numbers. 60% said that it helped them, or they liked the design. 50% believed that it helped prioritize their day. And despite that, we still learned that we needed some more intuitive navigation, some easier entry points. And overall, it needed to feel local. It needed to feel like it was built for them in Japan. And this is a screenshot of our current design. Hopefully I can play it. There you go. So this kind of just shows how we elevated some of the content, made some of the navigation a little bit easier. Yeah. It's fine. So, so in short, sorry about the video. In short, we were able to learn that creating disruption can lead to an enjoyable experience, not only for us, but for our audience as well. We were able to come into a legacy environment such as IBM, create something from scratch that looked like nothing they had ever seen or used before, and really gain a lot of learning from that experience. So just to kind of reiterate, exploring the environment, building trust, gaining understanding, throwing away all assumptions, and iterating is one way that you can approach ex- creating enjoyable user experiences for audiences. Thank you.
Questions? All right, all right, all right. Do.
Hi. I guess this may be an obvious point, but I'm just curious. They brought you in from US to design a product in Japan. I'm sure that there are capable agencies in Japan. So, do you know if there's any certain thinking behind that, or was that just more a business scenario? Because I'm sure that there's both pros and cons of having someone from a very different culture work on something because you've got a different outsider view of that that style?
Absolutely. So the thinking was we built the product in Japan. We're going to launch it in Japan, but it was supposed to be a global product. Our next launch was in London, then Dallas, then New York. So we wanted a global team. We were actually integrated with a few team members there in Japan. So it was kind of a nice team assortment. But another reason why they brought us in from New York, even though many great agencies are over there in Japan, they wanted something different. They wanted a different approach to thinking. They wanted someone who could kind of come in and shake things up and really set forth a presence. And doing things the typical way by using some of the agency partners wasn't proving effective for them. So they used their agency partners in New York to come to Japan, then London, Bangalore, Dallas, etc.
Is the tool English only, or can it
No.
be specific to other languages too? And did that present new IA problems along the way?
No, and sorry, I skipped that point. So the tool is not in English only. One of our interesting encounters was how do you do user testing in Japan with an English product? So we had our first user test, and they were looking at it. They're saying, "What is this? It's not in Japanese. Can't use it. And you don't even speak Japanese. If you're going to interview me, speak my language. You're in my country." So that was a kind of funny, awkward interaction. So our next set of wireframes for our user testing was all in Japanese, and we actually converted the currency to yen, and we had the navigation allow you to select which language you're in, and also your news sources. So if I'm in Japan, I can turn on local news content only, switch the language to Japan, switch the currency to yen. Same for London, same for America. So our the wireframes I showed you were in English, just for our audience, but we had another set that were in Japanese so that we could do more effective testing.
All right. Oh.
Hi, I'm curious about other languages that you're doing, for example, sign language or American Sign Language, or you're speaking English now. How could we create an architecture for something like a visual language like American Sign Language? For example, it's kind of an expansion on what you were talking about, but in Japanese, you have Japanese Sign Language also. So we have English, and the interpreter is messing this up, and you'll all excuse the interpreter. Okay? I meant speaking English and speaking Japanese, not sign language. The interpreter was way off. Okay. Okay, yes, that's
No.
what I meant.
No, absolutely. That's an excellent question, and I think what we are trying to move towards is making it a more native app, so we have a little bit more control of how we handle the content. So if we could use any reading services or anything that would allow for greater accessibility of our actual content, that would be one of the next milestones that we try to achieve. We were definitely designing within a bubble, so I will be the first to admit it wasn't 100% accessible. But challenges like that are something that we're considering as we go through our continuous agile process in our future design sprints. And I think she wants to change her.
This is not clear. We're talking about just the English and the Japanese, the spoken language, and I was wondering how, in a foreign language, how it integrates. How do you actually design that the information in other languages other than English?
Right. Oh, so as far as our design considerations, we actually did Google Translate to put it in different languages and make sure that for most of the languages that we're capturing, it would fit in a way that still made sense. It wouldn't break the design system. So we spent a lot of time making sure that our spacing and our text alignment would allow for different languages to easily fit in without it being too broken.
But Google Translate is not very exact. you know, it's you don't have the human element, and you know, how
Right.
did the English?
Not for content, but for sizing with characters. So we had a content team deployed locally to every market that we were releasing it in
Oh, I see.
that would do actual translations for the market.
Lorem, Lorem,
Excuse me?
like Lorem.
Yeah, Greek placeholder. Correct. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Isaiah. All right. So let's see. I think next up is going to be this thing. Let's see. Things got changed. There's going to be snacks. But wait a minute. There's snacks and beer and wine and food left over from lunch. Now, we want you to eat and drink and be merry. But do stick around. Don't just leave. I know it's snowing. Maybe your commute sucks. I'm pointing that out. But don't leave. But don't leave, because after you drink a little bit, there's talks about utopia, 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 and then there's something crazy. And stay seated just for a moment. We have giveaways, right? There's